Tell us a little bit about your journey to inventing Predictor.
Okay, well, I was hired in 1965 by a pharmaceutical company in New Jersey, and I was living in Manhattan. It was kind of a tough way to get there every day, but the parent company in the Netherlands, it was a big, big conglomerate, decided that this company should take on some products that are sold in the stores, which they never did. They were a business to business kind of lab to lab pharmaceutical company. So they brought on three companies. For women's products. Two of them were cosmetic companies, another was for healthcare, that sort of thing. And so they needed somebody to start working on these, and they found me, thinking that I'd had enough of a background working in small ad agencies, and I worked at Harper's Bazaar and that sort of thing. I would know enough about women's products, I suppose. So at any rate, I started working there, and I discovered pretty quickly that instead of doing my design work or anything artistic there, they'd hired five ad agencies to handle all these new products, which is kind of overkill, frankly. But each agency did all the creative work. I didn't. I was meant to count the bottles and caps that had to go in all these products and be a product manager, for which I'd be terrible. I would be the worst product manager I've ever existed. So I started doing that at any rate. And I got to meet some of these agency people and to go to their meetings, and I learned a great deal. It was really, on my side, a benefit, I guess you could say. But still, there I am working at the pharmaceutical company, pretty unhappy. And so one day I was in the laboratory for the first time. Somebody took me through because they were doing stabilization for one of the products I was working on, a lotion of some sort. So they took me through the lab in the big building where I was not working, and I saw this group of test tubes over a metallic angled kind of shelf, and asked what they were. It was a little weird looking thing. And they said, well, those are doctors' pregnancy tests. We do them for doctors. They send samples of women's urine here, and we test it and get back to the doctors to tell them women's pregnant or not. And the doctor then tells the woman or her husband, actually, in those days. So, at any rate, that's how I got started. At any rate, that was the beginning. And in 1967. Because I was in the laboratory and saw the contraption, I had this idea that a woman could do this test herself. It really was like a big light bulb business that happened to me. I just couldn't believe it. Looking at these test tubes, I thought, well, it all took were test tubes and some chemistry and a mirror, which that was the metal. In that case, the shiny metal was acting as a mirror for the bottom of these test tubes. Someone explained it in detail to me so I could understand what was happening. So I went home that night and I thought, God, this is really something women should have. They really ought to have this. So that's the beginning.
Thank you. When you think back to that moment where you first had the idea, what stands out most clearly?
I think, I thought this is the 1960s, and it's meant to be the sexual revolution or whatever, and more people were shacking up, let's say, more freely than they might have in the past. And a lot of my friends would get a little concerned if their period was late or somehow what would they do if they were pregnant. And if they didn't already have a doctor, most women didn't, unless you had a reason to have one, some illness or something. You'd have to find a doctor, and if you weren't married, you may not get a doctor. So it was kind of a difficult time. Even though the pill had started making the rounds in 1960, again, if you were an unmarried woman, you wouldn't get the pill. Luckily, I was one of the few people that did because I had another medical reason for it. And so I wasn't so concerned about getting pregnant. But even then, if I was late, I would worry. So the thought of having some way to find out immediately that you were pregnant and not anybody else knowing this was wonderful. I thought that would be the main benefit to this product. It was information for women. I thought this had to happen, period.
Thank you. Just thank you for thinking this needed to happen on behalf of, I think, everyone here. So what was it like when people began to finally uncover and acknowledge your role in developing this?
Well, that happened because a woman from the New York Times in 1912, I guess, wrote a story about the present test, the wand test. And it's a wonderful test. I mean, it's really an amazing little machine. I think it's perfect. And it should have come after mine because it's so much better and easier to use. And so she wrote a story about this as being like the home pregnancy test invention. And I was really, I get the Times, I look at this article and I'm, what's this all about? She mentions a little, chemistry set looking thing for kids or whatever, and doesn't even say where this came from before the present test. So my family and a few people that knew what I did got after me and said, you have to do something about this. You have to let people know. So, I actually still had the prototype in my closet in a shoebox. And one of my brother Peter called the Smithsonian without my knowing and told them what I had. And the Smithsonian started calling me saying, they want this. We want you to donate this to us. How amazing this is. So I had to fight them off in a sense because I really wasn't able to donate anything. I was kind of holding on there. And so, at any rate, when the story came out in the Times, I got a lot of letters from film companies or interview companies or, story companies, book companies. And just one company I thought was worth going further with. And I'd asked friends of mine in LA who had a film company what they thought of this person. And they said, yeah, he's legitimate. He's with a big LA company. But if it doesn't work out with him, we would love to do your story because we know you. And one of the people there was one of my clients in New York at Japan Society. And so I was really happy about that. So I worked with them and not the man who wanted to do the story. And so that started work on a film for quite some time. But everything else was kind of, at this point, Ira had died, and I felt terrible that, the story came up in the paper and wasn't mentioned. He wasn't part of this at this point. And made me think even more about his involvement and how much he helped me. And that was part of it all. I did eventually put it up for auction and with Bonhams in New York City. And the Smithsonian did bid on it, even though they wanted me to take it out of the auction so they could buy it for less. And at any rate, it was too late. The auction had almost started at that point. They paid for it and they got it. So it's at the Smithsonian. I'm happy it's there.
I think everyone here is excited to go see it next time they're in DC. So what helped you stay committed when the obstacles felt the heaviest?
Well, I didn't explain the problem for me because some of the executives went to the Netherlands for their twice annual meetings, I guess, and somebody said, hey, somebody actually in the company thought it would be nice to have this made into a product for women. And the Dutch didn't laugh. They said, this is a great idea. And here's some money, do a market test, go back and do a market test. So I find out that the company started to do plans for market tests for a women's self-test. And I heard that there was going to be a meeting in the conference room the next morning from when I heard about this, because they'd hired product designers to design the prototype for this. And so I was really scared to do this, but I crashed that meeting. I took my design and went into that meeting. And at the point I got there, it was early, so just a few of the men from the company were there, not another woman at all. And eventually these three designers came in from a product design company. Everybody's introduced all around. And they put their designs on the table, and I put mine down next to theirs. And then in walks three people from an ad agency because they couldn't go to the market without an ad agency. And the primary person in that group was Ira Sturdivant, this elegant, tall man. I absolutely, I went weak in the knees seeing him. And he walks over to the table and picks mine up. And he said, well, this is what we're using, right? And they said, oh, no, that's just something Meg did for talking purposes. We can't do that. And so he's looking, who's Meg? And they point me out, and he sort of nods and he talks to the product designers about what their plans were, and that takes some time to go through each of the three products that they brought. And at the end of the meeting, Ira comes over to me and said he's so sorry because he think mine was perfect, and why didn't they take it? He couldn't understand that. And I was absolutely, at this point, I'm really just floored, having met Ira, also pushed down by the company having putting me aside and not even inviting me to this meeting. And it was a very confusing, believe me, I was absolutely gaga at this point. So I took off from work for a couple of days. And because this is before computers, before cell phones or anything, you go to the yellow pages if you want to find things. And so I found some plastic company in the Bronx in New York or in Newark, and each one told me I should see somebody else, and they gave me other phone numbers and people to see until I finally found a company. I couldn't tell them what it was for, but this plastic box, can you make this box? And a company that was based in Pennsylvania actually took it on and came up with prices that were much better than the product designers' products. So the company had to use mine. That was it. I don't know why they didn't want to begin with. I think they were just kind of couldn't believe that somebody in the company, especially a woman, could come up with something useful for them. I'm sorry, but I really think that was part of it. Anyway, so that was a major part of the story, that conference room meeting, both meeting Ira and being told from the company that they couldn't do mine.
What was it in you that made you turn around after that meeting and look at the phone book and figure it out anyway? What was that in you?
I had to. If they weren't going to do it, I had to give it all I could, and I had to say, look, it could be done. Let's make it, possible, and all the rest. And I was so furious. I was really angry, and I didn't understand, frankly, their reasoning. And one of the executives said, looking at mine, well, it looks like something a wealthy woman could do and or could buy, and this is just any possible reason not to do mine they gave. But at the same time, they're hiring people to do prototypes. So, and they're all men, by the way. And one of them even had his tassel on the cap, and others had flowers all over it. I mean, it just, no, this was not scientific stuff. And I think probably they hired these men because they were doing the kind of work for them that what they were doing for their other products or other business. So, I don't know. I've never done something like that before, but I never had reason to go around to, printers or manufacturers before. It was kind of fun when I started doing it, a little scary, but people were very kind and wanted to help.
I love that. Looking back, what moment in this whole journey changed you the most?
That's a really good question. I guess, not letting something slip because I don't have the guts to work it out or to make it happen, let's say. Keep going is what I think I learned about all that. Just go over this other hurdle somehow and see what happens. And so many people in the company, once they decided to do it, whether it's my product or not, because the Dutch were making them do it, people had these moral concerns about, oh no, this is not something that women should do themselves. Doctors have to do this. And of course, doctors were men at that point. Almost all gynecologists were male. And so there was a man in New York City who ran a big church downtown near NYU, and it was a big famous church for doing avant-garde gallery work and dance programs and wonderful stuff. Everybody knew them. But he was the man in charge. And so my boss was they gave me a boss, by the way. I was supposed to do the women's products with this man in the lead. And so he was grumbling about all the problems with the product and whether it was mine or not. So I called Howard Moody in New York and said, can I bring somebody to you because I've invented something I think you might be interested in? And he said, sure. So I came to New York and met him with this man. And Howard was very, very lovely. He was interested in how the product worked and the mechanics of it and all the rest. And he finally said at the end, I have so many poor parishioners here. Women are having one baby after the next, which they can't either afford psychologically or financially to do. And once these are available, I'm going to have them here in the church for anybody to have them. Now, he was an amazing man. He started an organization in the 50s into the 60s with other religious people, rabbis and ministers across the country. And they started an organization to get women abortion if they needed them, to get them safe, good abortions if they needed to have them. And these people would arrange them for women. And Howard Moody went right to the New York Times and said, "This is what we're doing." It's on the front page, I think, of the Times. "We're doing this for women, and this is how we're doing it because we don't want back alley abortions or people dying because they need this. We're going to take care of them." Nobody bothered them after that. Amazing person. So I was lucky in that, really, because some of the people in the company still went on about the morality of this, but it was less of a problem, once they got, and another executive went to his minister, a very wealthy part of Westchester, New York, and this guy said, "Yeah, it looks like a good idea to me." So, in the long run, the morale part of this was softened, although Ira and I were chosen to do the marketing in Canada to get it started with the money the Dutch gave the company. And so we did hear some, ministers getting up in churches and saying, this is a sin, people shouldn't do this, women shouldn't do this themselves and all that. But on the other hand, more people were happy that they could. And it was a great experience. It was a great experience.
Are you open to answering some questions from the folks who are gathered here?
Sure, please. Yeah.
Wonderful. Does anybody have a question?
Hi, Meg Crane. I'm Jenna Jane. I'm playing you in the show.
Are you? That's great.
I am. It's so wonderful to finally get to talk to you. So I heard you say in another interview that you were very careful about how and when you brought up ideas to the people working at Organon. And so I just wanted to learn more about how you did that calculus, what you took into consideration, and just how you made those decisions on when to approach and how.
Yeah, that was important, especially the first time I brought, I didn't bring anything to anyone or the idea of it at all until I had a prototype I thought was quite almost there, let's say. And so when I brought it to the executive who hired me and he laughed about it, he said, "Well, how could we do that? We'll lose our doctor business and all that sort of thing." And in a sense, he sent me back to do the work they'd hired me for. And so I thought that didn't go over too well. And I wondered what he thought of me even doing this. So I kind of knew I had to be a little bit quiet about approaching anybody and not to push it hard because that would have made it even worse. So this is before the Dutch got involved and wanted to market test and all that. So I was very careful. I spoke to a couple of other people in the company when they came in to talk to about something else that, by the way, what would you think of women being able to do this themselves, that sort of thing. I was kind of skirting the issue maybe a little bit. But if I got too pushy about it, they just probably fire me or not, it wouldn't be a good idea. I kind of knew that.
Thank you, Meg. I would also.
Hi, Meg.
Hi.
I am Gigi Genuine, and I am the director of the play.
Oh, wonderful. Wow.
Thank you. I have two questions for you. The first one is, to what degree was Ira influential in you continuing to push to making this happen?
Well, I guess he wasn't involved in my doing the prototype or getting to that point at all. I mean, that happened before I met him. And I only met him at that first meeting when the other designers were meant to start working on it. And so at the point when and I didn't know him at all or anything about him, but when I finally got a company that could make it, for the right price and all the rest, and I came back to the company with it, I was already meeting with them to go ahead with the idea of how to advertise it, how to, promote it, let's say. So I started working with him. The most wonderful thing is working with this great guy about pregnancy tests. It was just the most unimaginable, wonderful time for me. And so he was behind it from the day he saw it the first, at that meeting. He thought it was the best possible outcome. And so we had to start working together on the advertising and how to do it. So I was back and forth from New York in his office and the big company he worked for, and he and other people from the ad agency would come out to New Jersey and have meetings about, going forward and all that. So we started our life in a sense that way. And by the time we were doing the work in Canada, we were living together only a few months after we met. And of course, the company couldn't know that. So that was fine. And we were together for 41 years after that. So we had our own business and it was a wonderful life. I miss him unbelievably today.
Thank you for that. I have another question. Why did you sign?
The patent right.
But they weren't going to do anything with it, right?
I know. And they never did, by the way. They never did market the products, believe it or not, after all this. They never wanted to get into that. They were scared to death of it. So what happened one day, well, after that meeting and in the conference room, I was called to the big building, and there on a table were all kinds of papers and some of the company lawyers. I knew who they were, and a couple other people I didn't know what their business was. And they told me that they were going to apply for patents for the two patents for the product, because by the time this starts, everybody's going to know this is happening, and other companies are going to jump in and try to do it. And it's protecting them and their rights in a sense. And if I didn't sign it, because at that point, probably still today, in patents in the United States, you'd have to have the inventor's name on the patent, even if somebody else has been given the right. It still has to have so my name is going to be on the two patents. And they would give me $1 for this, which is kind of a standard thing. Like they had to pay me something, and that's kind of well, I finally agreed because I was so excited they might do this, and it could happen pretty quickly once they got the patents, and that was thrilling to me in one sense. And so on the other, I was by myself without a lawyer. That's kind of dangerous. I tell younger people now, look, if somebody else does the same thing to you and they're all lawyers and you don't have one, walk away and come back with a lawyer, or just don't do it. Take care of yourself. I don't think it would have mattered then because, again, they didn't want to do it. So that in the long run, once the FDA approved the product, it took some years for that to happen. They sold it with my patent rights to 3 big companies that did have products in the pharmacy. And that's how they got off it. They got the money for the rights to use the patents. But they didn't have all of having the morality issues or anything else about it. So the other companies took that upon themselves.
Hello, my name is Vet Varian, and it's an honor to meet you. Question to you is, can you give us what your feeling was when you found out your product hit the global market?
And that was, we did the test in Canada. That was one thing in 1971. And at that point, the Dutch company took my design, my patent design in a sense, and started selling it all over Europe in the early 70s. And it was selling in Canada. And we couldn't sell it in the United States until the FDA approved it. So that took another 7 years, actually. But it was pretty exciting for me to know it was out there. And in the early days, it had to be refrigerated, so people had to ask the pharmacy for it. And that wasn't the way I'd seen it going. But pretty quickly, the company found ways to market it without refrigeration, and a woman could pick it up off the shelf and buy it pretty quickly. And even today, I was in a CVS recently, and there was a narrow aisleway with a whole shelf of pregnancy tests. All kinds of pregnancy tests are out there now. And this young woman was looking at them all and taking notes. She wasn't quite sure, I think, which way she was going to go, but it was very exciting for me to see her. I didn't want to disturb her, obviously, or tell her I was looking at her, but it's pretty exciting to see people buy them. It's very exciting.
Thank you. Hi, Meg. I'm Deb Kelly. My question is, what was your reaction the first time you saw your story on stage?
Oh, well, it's out of this world somehow. It's it's always been done so beautifully. The first time was in Lincoln, Nebraska, and it was a great production. A wonderful director who has since, I'm sorry to say, died recently. And going out to Lincoln in January, freezing cold and all the rest. And I was there with a couple of my nieces, and some friends came out for this. And even two guy friends who were crying at the end of the play, very touched by all that. And I think people did a great job of putting it across. The playwright is wonderful. I mean, she's really brilliant, and you're lucky to be working in one of her plays. I think it's really she's special. She's had a lot of very good. Most of the plays that she's done have something to do with women and a woman in science somehow. Though I'm not a scientist, so I'm sort of the odd side out for this. But women who have had trouble in their lives because they are women and are scientists, and each story is different. Each of her plays.
Hello, Meg. How are you?
Fine, fine.
Hi, my name is Ivy Sunflower. I'm also in the play. I play the role of Jody.
Good.
Well, my first question for you is Jody a real person, or did you have a best friend, roommate type individual that gave you that push along the way to keep going and give you more coffee?
Very real. And she's in Santa Fe right now. That's where she lives. And her daughter is Hester Sunshine, famous Hester of the Project Runway. And she's in New York. And I'm just talking with Hester yesterday, and she's going out to see Jody and stay there with her for a week. And Jody's wonderful. She is an artist. She's still doing artwork, even though her eyes are failing her and all the rest, but she's a real person. She's quite an energetic. She jumped in to teach art to kids in New York City schools until she retired, and she was so good at it. So many of those students of hers are still long-term friends, and she really was very inspiring to kids. And her artwork is fun too. So no, she's wonderful. She's absolutely. I was lucky also to not just be in school with her, but be a roommate with her for some on and off for different times.
Beautiful, wonderful. I do have one more.
Have fun being Jody.
Yes. Oh, I'm having a blast. And my other question for you is, looking at today's landscape of at-home medical testing, do you feel like the revolution that you created has fully achieved what you hoped it would with at-home medical testing?
Oh yeah, I think I did speak some years ago after the test was already out to a group of doctors in Montreal, and it was very nice to do that. The whole meeting was a 2-day conference on whether ideas come from within or without the medical community. And I really think that very often nurses or people that take direct care of patients, for instance, are the best people to know what their people are going to need if they're in a health crisis or something like that. And I wish doctors would. I hope doctors pay more attention to people taking direct care of patients, for instance. And I think that we're going to be seeing a lot of tests for different types of illnesses coming up. Especially, I think AI is probably going to have a part of making that happen sooner, perhaps. I hope better. But that's going to be something for us to follow.
Hi, Meg. My name is Karen. I'm an avid theater goer. I'm not in the play, but I will be seeing it the weekend that you're here.
Oh, great. Yeah.
I was wondering, you mentioned that you and Ira ventured into several other businesses. And I was just curious, is there anything you could share about that?
Oh, goodness. Yeah, we did. Ira, we worked for Bristol Myers for about 8 years, developing new products on there for them. And Ira actually, even though he was a copywriter, he was very scientifically interested and actually developed a couple of products himself. And we did pharmaceutical work. People at Bristol Myers did know my background, not quite how it happened, but and that was all right. We also had small, tiny islands in the Caribbean. Like the first one was 8.5 square miles. And for 20 years, we did work for them, and it was really wonderful. And then we got other hotels and Caribbean island work to do. But we couldn't spend too much time. And because we did work for Japan Society for almost 30 years, all their promotional works. And oh goodness, for so many things we did work for Velcro when they thought that the Japanese were going to come in and take over that business. They never did. So Velcro is still Velcro. We had a lot of very interesting clients. We we had too many sometimes. It was very hard. We were working 7 days a week, and my father used to call us on a Sunday and say, "You're in the office, right?" And yeah, Dad. But you'd have to. If we were a very small agency, we never wanted to be a big one. And we had one or two people working with us who were great. When I started getting a little too ill to go to work, we closed our office and I started working on a few things from home, but we realized we couldn't continue really. We had some financial company in town, which we really didn't like very much. It wasn't a nice atmosphere to do work for financial people. Anyhow, yeah, it was a very mixed bag of things. Luckily, one gives to another somehow. You know, it really keeps you going to keep having to think all the time and get something that's effective and also creative and done quickly and well. That keeps you on your toes. I admire anybody in advertising today. It's very different the way it's working today than when we were working. A totally different process.
I do have one other question. I'm not aware of, how did this playwright come in to do this work? Did she approach you, and how involved were you in developing the actual play?
But she saw the story in the New York Times, you know, the one that did tell about my test. And she's in Ball State University. She's in the drama department there. And her producer for all her other plays is in LA. And so she called him, asked if he saw the story, and he said, "Yeah, it's a great story." And so they found me and called me, and she started writing questions to me for me to answer. So I did a lot of writing in order to give her information she needed. And then I spent about a week out in Ball State with her to meet her and meet her classes and all that sort of stuff. It was really great fun. So we spent a lot of time together, and she'd been at many of the plays too, you know, as they go around. We actually, New York was the 9th venue for it. We've actually done the play in 9 cities so far. And again, we're going to Florida, to Tampa. That would be the 10th.
Well, will everybody join me in thanking Meg?
Oh, well, thanks to you. Thanks for the questions. They're really, thanks.
Thank you so much, Miss Crane. And we cannot wait to see you July 24th and 25th.
Oh, I'm looking forward to, I wish we were staying longer, but we can't. So 2 nights, but that's great. You know, it's wonderful.